Would you say that Dramamine is killing the barf bag?
Probably 1999 is when I started really collecting.
It was a fairly small collection.
You know, I thought it might make me an interesting conversationalist, and that is completely wrong.
Well, here we are.
In fact, you can't even find them anymore.
If they died, they should die with dignity.
Thank you, everyone, for being here. I'm really excited to talk to you. My name is Sydnye White. I'm Vice President of Content and Storytelling at Special Olympics. And prior to this, I was in broadcast nonfiction television. And so it's really a pleasure to be able to join Brand Storytelling on the jury, which your film has been selected for the 2025 Brand Storytelling Film Festival that will be in Sundance in January. And I was such a big fan of the film that the folks at Brand Storytelling figured, hey, let's get Sydnye to moderate this particular group. I just thought that the film was so unique and refreshing and entertaining and educational, just that you all were able to take something that's so innocuous that we see often but don't think about and turn it into a compelling piece of film was very exciting to me. So I'm really excited to talk to you today and would love to go around, have everyone introduce yourselves, your name, who you work with, and what your connection is to the film. That would be great.
I'll start. My name is Randi Jachino. I'm a VP of Marketing at Prestige Consumer Healthcare. I was lucky enough to have Dramamine under my purview at Prestige when FCB brought this amazing idea to us. So that's been fun. I've been in CPG and health and wellness marketing for over 20 years, and really excited to talk about this amazing film.
Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Andrés Ordoñez. I am the Global CCO at FCB. And obviously, I was very involved in this project with Randi since the beginning. It's one of the incredible relationships that we have as partners, and getting to do such a beautiful project, it paid off. It just shows the energy and the love for the brand that we all have and the respect for each other. So here we are.
Hi. I'm Preston Garrett. I'm the managing director and co-founder of Rakish. We are a commercial production company, and we had the privilege of, first off, being very good friends with Andrés and all the fine folks at FCB. And so when this project became a possibility, I had the pleasure of receiving the call from Andrés saying, hey, we have a really interesting project. I'd love to run it by you. And then ultimately that evolved into us getting to participate to produce the final film that you saw.
I can go. Hey, I'm Caleb. I'm one of the directors, one of 4 actually that worked on this project, Sunny 16. So this was just such an honor, such a cool project to be able to direct. I was also kind of the lead edit on this, and you hear my voice throughout the doc as well. Or the film. I call it a doc because that's the way we approached it, which we'll get into, I'm sure. But yes, I'm Caleb. Thanks for having me on.
I can go next, as I was another one of the 4 directors of Sunny 16. I am Taylor Pendleton, and this, as Caleb said, was just a dream. As I directed it, and I also shot all of the stills along the way, which was so much fun.
I guess that leaves me. I'm John Malina. I was lucky enough to be the producer. So it was wrangling this gang, this motley crew, and 2 more, and a traveling entourage all over the country. So it was just a real pleasure when you get these kind of producing these kind of exciting jobs, these different challenges. So I was lucky enough to do that.
Great. Wonderful. Thank you, everybody. Randi, I'm going to start with you and just wanting to learn why Dramamine would get involved in such a project, especially since Barf Bags and Dramamine could be seen as a bit of competitors, and what it meant to the brand to do this film?
Sure. So first, a bit of background on Dramamine before this project came to us. So we had been working with FCB to modernize the brand and take it from a very problem solution item of you feel like you're going to throw up mostly due to motion sickness, and we make you not. And so we wanted to modernize the brand and not continue to show people that we're about to get sick, and really make it a lifestyle brand, because we had other innovation in nausea and other things coming down the road as well that are just more lifestyle products. And that journey had already started with a campaign called Drama Llama. He's super fun too. Not as exciting as the Barf Bag film, but exciting in his own right. And so we had started on that journey, and literally, I'm looking at the calendar, I'm looking at the date right now. I'm like, it was a year ago. I cannot believe it. Feels like it's been 10 years, but it was a year ago, almost to the day, when FCB came to us and they just said, we feel like you can do more with this brand. Here's this idea we have of 75th anniversary of the Barf Bag, 75th anniversary of Dramamine. And it was like right before we all headed out on vacation. So we saw the idea. We immediately were like, there's something here. Let's keep going. And I think the reason why we said yes is because we needed to insert the brand into different circumstances, and also insert it into regular life where people would be talking about it, get some earned media, get some press. And the idea, when first shown to us, we were like, okay, there's something here. Let's keep going. And that's why we said yes.
All right. So then, Andrés, you hear that, you know, they come to you and your team is responsible for now kind of coming up with a concept, coming up with, you know, something to actually carry the film along. So what was that process like for you all?
I mean, it's one of the most beautiful creative processes. Like, I feel that like Randi said, we had a great platform that we still have, obviously, and you know, we knew it was going to be the 75th anniversary, and as any other creative will do, we were very curious about learning more about what's up going on to that. And the other bug that we have inside our minds, it was like, how do we get into culture? It's not only being relevant or known, but in the area that we live of entertainment and everything, what's our role into people's life? And then one of the curious people of our team came to like, did you know that the same year Barf Bags were created? And we're like, what? And then that turned into a rabbit hole. We just went all into this, and then we started meeting all these incredible characters, and like a world record holder of Barf Bags. And like, does that even exist? And you can imagine what it's turned into. And then obviously there's a decline because, I mean, Dramamine was born. So it was a perfect love connection and a perfect story and a perfect story to be shared with the world. And that's where it all started. And I feel that when things like this happen, you have a great partner like Randi and her team, and you have great partners like Preston and 2016. It just makes it even bigger. We all talked, and every single time that we talked, they were like, yeah, let's go for that. And you feel the energy, because if you remove Dramamine for the story, there is no story. So we were the perfect character to share this story with the world, and think about a category that it's in the whole world of health and wellness, where it's like, if you look at they don't exist, these brands in there. So it was a perfect invitation for us, and a beautiful finding to create the Last Barf Bag.
And in Preston, when a project like this comes to you, is your first response like, oh my gosh, Barf Bags, what? Or is it like, oh my gosh, Barf Bags, this is going to be a wild ride?
Great question. I'm very immature. So as soon as the word barf was mentioned, I was like, I have to participate. I I have a vivid memory of Andrés sent me an email, and I think in the subject line was just like barf or barf bag, and it just said, "Hey, can you hop on a Zoom? I want to run a concept by you." And literally, just because it said barf in the subject line, I said, "Of course!" Like, I want to talk about that. And then he and some of his team then took me through a deck they'd made internally that really kind of walked me through the initial vision. And Andrés asked me pretty straight on, he's like, "Do you think this is interesting enough to hold an audience's attention for 10 plus minutes?" And we talked about it a bit, and I ultimately said, absolutely. I mean, it depends on how you tell the story, but I absolutely think so. There's so many different directions you can go in. And then, to my surprise, I thought he was just kind of gut checking, like, "What do you think of this?" with me. But then he said, "Okay, would you like to do it?" And, you know, to me, in my world, there are yes projects and no projects. There are projects where you have to say no to a lot of things. This was the type of project where you just say yes to everything, basically. And so I, of course, said yes. But as far as our role and how it manifests itself throughout a project like this, I think initially so much of it was, okay, here's the raw ingredients of the idea. There's any number of ways we could go about telling this story. Based on the timeline we were trying to deliver it on, a lot of the initial involvement was, okay, y'all, here's exactly how this needs to unfold chronologically, and here's the experience you need to be prepared for on a production level, so that there were no surprises about, like, the scale at which we were approaching things, which was, of course, very nimble, and how many movements we might have over the course of, say, a 10-day period, which is, I think, principal photography was mostly captured within a 10-day period with down days, etc. So much of it was like, okay, here's how this needs to go. Do you get it? Are you on board? Because we think this is the way to approach this to end up as successful as we all hope this project can be. So, and then throughout, and Sunny 16 and Professor Malina can speak to this a bit more in depth, but then from there, it was just consistently sharing information about, like, okay, we have this piece, now here's the next piece we need to get. Because by virtue of documentary, there needs to be spontaneity with how the story's put together. And, like, you might get one interview on day 2, and then you're like, ugh, you know what? Because they said this, we need this piece later that we never thought about before. And, like, you need to be able to stay elastic in that process, which is kind of the antithesis to any normal like television commercial ad campaign endeavor. So again, just staying very communicative about, okay, here's how this needs to go throughout the process was really one of the more significant roles we played.
And so you mentioned, you know, this being a documentary, but then Caleb said you go between calling this a documentary and a film, and I'm really curious as to why you go back and forth, if there's a difference for you in this case.
Yeah, I mean, it was obviously a commercial piece for a brand to promote a product, but the way we approached it, you know, was purely every single person in this film was a real person, like a real doctor, a real role, real people on the street. Randi was in it. You know, every cast member, if you will, was actually their role. So we didn't really script anything. We shot it interviews long. We have a lot of stuff that never made it, whittling down the story kind of later on. But yeah, we didn't set up boards. We didn't set up, you know, we had like a beat sheet and a high level outline of stuff we wanted to capture, but kind of like Preston was saying, as you're shooting something in an interview, then you realize you need to capture some supporting footage or, you know, this or that. We shot a lot of footage, and we had a handy cam and we had like a cinema camera, and we just kind of went to town. But yeah, Taylor, I mean, I feel like you can speak on it a little bit too. It's kind of our approach.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely call it a documentary. Because that is how that was our like North Star of how we approached it, is like everything needs to stay true to real life, because we knew that when the boards came to us, there was like lightning in a bottle that was happening, and we wanted to make sure that we got that. And so we knew we needed to, you know, run the cameras maybe longer than you normally would, just so we had space to get all of that magic. So yeah, we do call it a documentary. I feel like we call it a documentary more than a film.
Yeah, and it has that element of like, we're behind camera talking, asking some of the questions, which kind of immediately snaps you into that, like, oh, okay, I'm watching along with, I'm the audience, kind of like partaking in this, which feels docu-esque. I mean, does that answer your question, Sydnye?
Yeah, definitely. Cool. And it also brings me to, and I'll follow up with Taylor, just in terms of balancing that North Star view of it being a documentary with it being a brand film.
Right.
And, you know, Randy's work with Dramamine, making sure that
Right.
the brand goals are also being met. Like, how did you balance that?
Yes. We did a lot of like weekly communication for a lot of weeks. We had a lot of check-ins every time we were filming, so that, because the story is changing as you're filming, you know, and so it was really like open communication and also a lot of trust on kind of everyone's end. But I think everyone was able to trust each other because of that lightning in a bottle feeling. Everyone knew there was something special here. And so we made sure to trust each other, but then check in and make sure we're still on track with, you know, the few goals we still need to hit. So it was, I would say it really came down to communication. That was the biggest thing. We were constantly, you know, WhatsApping each other the whole time we were producing the film. It was really, really collaborative and really honestly incredible. And then I think where it really kind of became solid and where Dramamine sort of laid in it is obviously in the editing, which Caleb did. And even in the editing, everybody was working alongside in that as well. That was not just Caleb alone. So he was even getting feedback as that was happening, you know, put a little here, take a little out, that kind of thing. So it was very, very collaborative until the very end, I would say, which was key.
And then,
I'd say too.
yeah, go ahead. I was going to go to you anyway, John.
Yeah, I'm gonna say, Sydney, you know, one of the things, the beauty of the documentary style is that organically you got to ask every subject, well, how do you feel about Dramamine's impact on the barf bag? And that was gold, because everyone had a different take on it. But no matter what, it was never going to be disparaging to Dramamine. It was always like, yeah, Dramamine works. Yeah, don't need a barf bag. I mean, that's kind of the gist of it. But you know, the acknowledgement of that was also kind of interesting, because the collectors had this, they're so fond of their barf bags, but then they're like, yeah, the reality is, yeah, they're barf, like it's almost like a thing that's going away because of Dramamine. So it was just such it was organic how that just worked. And that's what makes, I think, the beauty of it. It's just an organic story.
Yeah. And I think that really came through. That's part of really why I enjoyed it. Like, nothing felt forced, but it was layered in it, and you know, it was complex yet presented so simply as well. And then John, I did want to ask you, just in terms of like the production timeline. Randy had mentioned that it was a year ago that you guys either started it or finished it, but is it something like, you know, for a project like this, did you feel like the timeline was something you normally have? Was it a little longer? Was it a little shorter?
Well, by the time it hit production, it was short. We had deadlines. It's the creative development was something we didn't want to rush. So it also took time to line up and kind of put the puzzle together where the collectors live. We literally shot in Austin, Texas, and Anchorage, Alaska, and San Diego, and every corner of the United States, Portland, Maine. We went to the Dramamine clients in New York. Like, it was, the timeline was part of the energy of this. Once we hit the road and we started shooting, it was a 10-day process, like Preston said, but that created a great what's next. We were shooting an airplane hangar of a stunt pilot who takes people up and tells us that they throw up on the airplane, while as producers, we're calling an amusement park to get permission to go on. So it's very much documentary style, but production wise, I'm a big believer, and I say this across all commercials, everything just scales to what the product and the goal is. The goal here was a documentary, so we honored that. We didn't have a lot of extra crew. Being nimble allowed us to cover probably 25% more, 50% more than we would have. And everybody was pulling in the same direction. FCB, they had assignments, you two are going to go to Alaska, you two are going to Portland, Maine. So there was just a constant evolution of the process, because that's what documentaries are. They're discoveries. And you guys know, like in Portland, Maine, we're talking to the collector, and he's like, well, my buddy owns a boat, and he takes people out and they throw up. And 2 hours later, we're talking to the boat guy. So production wise, it was just, you need momentum, and that's what we got. And we had another producer, Mario D'Amici. So he took the West Coast, I took the East Coast, and that was the beauty of the project. It was really a documentary.
Great, great. Randi, in terms of Dramamine, perspective on the brand and the brand voice, did they have a lot to say at the beginning on, they wanted it to be a little bit lighter, or they wanted it to be more whatever? And then were they happy with the tone as it emerged?
So I'll answer the last question first. We were extremely happy. And honestly, the rest of the folks on the phone here, they do this a lot. We do not. So it was definitely a leap of faith. And, we've been talking about trust, but I can't understate that point, because it was scary as a client to be on this journey. We didn't, like, I forgot who said, like, there's no boards. There's not even like here's the story and here's how it's going to unfold. It's like, we're telling the story. There's these 4 barf bag collectors. We got the gist of the story of Dramamine, killing the barf bag, and we're going to breathe new life into it. So we signed off on that. But, Caleb came to our office. I'd love to see that B-roll one day, because the stuff that was going on, like, we finished that day, and I looked at my colleague and I was like, some of the stuff we did today, like, that can't go out. Like, that's going to look weird.
Were you asking
And then we saw the film, and like, that stuff wasn't in it, right? So, it was, so when we first got it, I mean, we did at the very beginning give guardrails for the brand and how it would exist in this documentary. The FCB team already knew the brand and the DNA and where we were headed, so it wasn't like an extensive conversation, like we were just briefing them. But we did say, even for the company, of here's what's off limits, here's what's on limits, within limits, and they respected that. Did they push us? 100%. Did we push them? We pushed, on certain things and said, that can't, I don't know, borderline, like, I can't do that. And it was like this whole push and pull, and we landed in a phenomenal spot.
For me, the difficulty in this conversation is that we only have 30 minutes. So, like, I would love to follow up on some of what you're talking about. And for me, having worked both on the brand side and on the creative side, There's so much there to explore, but I would like to move to Andrés, since, you know, we've talked a little bit about the brand side, we've talked about the creative side, but when you're looking at developing something that you also hope will have an impact on audiences and keeping the audience in mind and how they'll receive it, how did you approach that?
I think one of the things that we say a lot in FCB is to make sure that we don't create whatever kind of work we're doing, that we're not sponsors, but we want more character in the story. And I feel that Dramamine was a character of the story, and I think that was the magic. The other thing is that the more that you get to learn these groups and that you go after a documentary, you have to be also respectful of what you're getting into, because for these people, this is a real thing. For these collectors, this is their pride and so many things and years of things. And so you're always walking a fine line of a docu or a mockumentary. And I think we were very clear that we were shooting a documentary and we were making a point and we were celebrating at the same time these people. So it was a little bit of understanding the role of the brand and how do we walk that fine line between the brand and the other characters. If the brand, we treat it as one more character. So finding that balance for us was key. And I think it was just mainly that, just making sure that we were not going to just sponsor a documentary.
And so, like, where do you see this film and the process you experienced in the future of brand storytelling?
It's a great question. I think one thing that this film in particular has proven is that branded storytelling can be good. It can be engaging. It can be something that isn't a blatant product message, which totally to the credit of Randi and Dramamine and also our friends at FCB, everyone understood that at the outset. You know, we as a company have been exposed to other, call it branded storytelling projects that aren't, say, you know, advertising in your typical TVC package. Yet what separated this project from others we've been exposed to that you might put in a similar category is that the brand integration into the film is, as Andrés said, it's a character in the film. It's not even the main character of the film. It's a strong supporting character. And Dramamine's central to the story, but not in the foreground, if that makes sense. It's more in the background. And so what that means to me as far as like the potential for branded storytelling to maybe become more of a pervasive type of platform is that when you look at how many people have embraced this film, viewed it, metrics on how it's ostensibly driven sales for Dramamine, I think it proves that there is an appetite for advertising that doesn't feel like it. The trick is everyone kind of has to be on the wavelength of, the brand doesn't need to be the main character. It doesn't. You know, the way internally we kind of talked about this film a lot as we were evolving it while we were in production prep, even in post, was, you know, this is a Dramamine produced film. That was kind of a mantra we kept in mind because we didn't want it to feel like a commercial. And so I think, you know, for other brands aspiring to get into this space, I think the success hinges on embracing that fact. You know, because everyone calls this a Dramamine film. It's right there in the title card. And the shorthand way of saying, I guess Barf Bag's the main shorthand way of saying it, but you know, the second way of saying it is Dramamine. So that's the beautiful hat trick that was accomplished with this. So, but it takes a certain mindset to make it successful. So I hope there's more like it.
Yeah.
So
I love that. And I think it's so true. And I think that's the trick too, like you said, is getting brands to understand that it's produced by the brand, but they're not necessarily central to the storytelling. We only have a few minutes, so I'm gonna ask Caleb and Taylor and John quickly. Starting with Caleb, what is it that you would hope audiences take away from this project?
Yeah, I mean, it was just a lot of fun. I mean, the tone, the lightheartedness, the fact that the brand didn't really, like y'all were saying, like secondary character, but didn't really come in until 7 minutes. You're able to tell a story and then introduce the brand a little bit. I mean, we had the letter thing at the front end, but and Randi, like you were saying, in the office, there was just so many moments where you're like, how is this gonna work? I mean, it was like borderline awkward, but that was somewhat of the tone we were going for with this piece. Not like every character in my brain had like a kind of like a kind of their attributes, and The Office was very much like the show The Office, like in a lot of ways. But Sydnye, to answer your question, I would say brand and agency that are willing to take creative risks will always yield better results. So obviously, from a creative and a director, it's like that's why we loved this project so much. They were very much taking big creative risks, putting a lot of trust, like Taylor mentioned earlier, in us, and we were able to kind of do what we do and what's in our brains and actually put out something that we think is like my parents watched it. They don't watch a lot of the stuff I work. It's like they were like, this is really good, like really good, coming from just the most general person. No offense to my folks, but it's like that means a lot. Like they watched it because our characters in it were so interesting. The brand was so interesting. Everyone can relate to Dramamine for the most part. So it's like, yeah, it was just a unique perspective on it, and I hope that more brands are willing to take as big of risks and the creative side, because that's what I do think resonates with an audience, will get views. People are a bit fatigued of just boom, spoon-fed kind of content. So, yeah.
Thank you. And Taylor, for you personally, what's something that you're really going to take away from this project, or something that was surprising that you learned throughout the process?
Oh my God. How much time do you have? There was so much. This was a real sprint for us at Sunny 16. We didn't really get into it, but the four of us, we basically split into two teams of two. And then one team did one coast and one team did the other coast. And so I think it was a really big learning for us internally at Sunny 16, proving that our like divide and conquer method really can work, like splitting up and maximizing our time and sort of building something fast like this, and having our hands all over it. It was a huge learning for us, and just kind of like what we're capable of as a quad, which is somewhat funky sometimes on projects, but for this project, it was perfection. It was perfection. So that was a big win for us. Yeah.
Great. And John, if you can take us home with some advice, if producers or creatives want to get into this space, what would you say to them?
Well, as a producer, the journey was so rewarding. Every creative idea was honored, everyone plus the job all along. And I think from a producer side is being open to going with it. I think you have to be part of building the momentum. When these creatives come up with wacky ideas, you just have to be ready to figure out how to do it. Niles, who's not on this call, is like, oh, I know a doctor and he lives in 2 hours from Anchorage. And our answer was like, we have to go. So I think the part of this project is just creating a team atmosphere from the production side. Because typically in our business, we never see a Randi. She's in the big office, and we're at the other end of the spectrum. But through Andrés and his team, like we were just constantly communicating, and it was just open. That's how we support doing better work and more of this, is to be a cog that brings everything together.
Well, thank you for that. And thank you to all of you. I mean, I really learned a lot. I think it really came through this discussion how much you enjoyed working with each other and how much you respected each other. And I think it's just a testament that the film, The Last Barf Bag, shows that you can be kind and have fun and make great films. So thank you for your hard work. Thank you for your time today. And we look forward to whatever's next from each and all of you. So thanks and see you later.